But Governor Walz can't hide from this story as House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer is investigating the scandal and is determined to uncover the truth.
He's going to have to answer questions about the billions, not millions, not hundreds of millions, billions of dollars of fraud that we see wasted in Minnesota. And the fact that, according to state whistleblowers, state employees in Minnesota, most of whom are Democrats, they allege that they alerted both Governor Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison about this fraud, and they did nothing about it because they didn't want to offend that massive Somali population.
What if I told you one of the biggest welfare fraud scandals in American history didn't happen in secret, but right under the watch of Democrat leadership? New details are surfacing about an alleged $9 billion Minnesota welfare fraud, and suddenly the excuses are falling apart. While working Americans struggle to put food on the table, insiders allegedly treated taxpayer money like an ATM. Today, we break down what they don't want you to hear and why accountability matters now more than ever.
Going down swinging like Tim Walz. Well, we're learning new details about the magnitude of Minnesota's massive welfare fraud. Federal authorities say it could total over $9 billion.
The fraud is not small. It isn't isolated. The magnitude cannot be overstated. What we see in Minnesota is not a handful of bad actors committing crimes. It's a staggering industrial scale fraud. It's swamping Minnesota and calling into question everything we know about our state.
But Tim Walz and his administration are pushing back, saying there was only a little bit of fraud.
What you're seeing here is you're seeing a weaponization. We'll continue to fix it. They're going to continue to come up with numbers that don't have it there, and it's sensationalized. I don't expect anything different from this administration.
The evidence that we have indicates tens of millions of dollars in fraud. There isn't a final number at this point, but we don't have evidence to suggest that level of fraud or a $9 billion number.
But Governor Walz can't hide from this story as House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer is investigating the scandal and is determined to uncover the truth.
He's going to have to answer questions about the billions, not millions, not hundreds of millions, billions of dollars of fraud that we see wasted in Minnesota. And the fact that, according to state whistleblowers, state employees in Minnesota, most of whom are Democrats, they allege that they alerted both Governor Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison about this fraud, and they did nothing about it because they didn't want to offend that massive Somali population.
Guy, this to me, if there was ever an investigation to be had, and Republicans were ever going to take time to investigate anything, I would say this would probably be it. And I don't think Minnesota is where it should stop. I think Minnesota is where it should start, because I have a feeling many other states, we could probably uncover some billions with the B. But I know you and I both saw a tweet about this, about just massive welfare fraud in general and SNAP fraud. I mean, it spans a lot of different categories, right? But if you break down the numbers, I think we saw a real staggering one about how much money we're actually being robbed of in this country.
Yeah, I mean, you can go through any of the numbers, actually. Starting just in Minnesota, it seems like what we're hearing from the governor there is, oh, the Republicans are making up numbers. No, this was a federal prosecutor after a very in-depth, substantial investigation into what he called industrial scale fraud in the state of Minnesota, all presided over by Governor Tim Walz. And out of one side of his mouth, Walz is trying to say like, oh, we're going to fix it and it's bad. Out of the other side of his mouth, he's like, well, it's really not that much. It's only tens of millions, according to his little minion there. And that means they are not ever going to be serious about this. They are perfectly comfortable with their taxpayers being robbed blind for political and identity reasons. And he just wants to get reelected next year. So he wants to pretend like this is some sort of GOP witch hunt, when in fact, the prosecutor in this case, and we saw a bit in that clip from him. I just want to read one more quote from him, talking about why it is especially bad in Minnesota. Quote, Minnesota has become a magnet for fraud, so much so that we have developed a fraud tourism industry. People coming to our state purely to exploit and defraud its programs. This is a deeply unsettling reality all Minnesotans should understand. It is so bad in Minnesota that people from around the world, it seems, are traveling there to steal from taxpayers. And that's the response we're seeing from the governor. It's pathetic.
You know, Joey, we invite the third world and in return, they rob us blind. But that's such a nice, generous gift they've given back to us. I mean, Tim Walz has made a big thing about don't say it's the Somalis. But when you look at the fraud, it was done by the Somali population. So he wants to make it about race. He wants to make it about identity. The mayor there wants to eat Somali food and almost throw up and say, I love the Somalis. But I don't think they're understanding that we don't care because it's their race or their religion. We care because it's a group of people who are doing it. And to Guy's point, apparently they're doing it in a well-organized way, and they targeted this state for it.
Yeah, I don't care about their race. I do care about their country of origin. I mean, Rob O'Neill, if you don't know who he is the man who shot bin Laden. He put the book out. But before that, or after that, I'm not sure, he also was on the team that saved Captain Phillips. And he posted on X today, yeah, the Somalis are world famous for being pirates. Of course, they came here to steal and defraud us. He's like, it's a part of their culture. I don't know how you call that racist. If it's true, it's true. I mean, I don't have to go back to Mogadishu to see these problems. But what I will say this when it comes to what's being said is never snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. If it's a $1 billion scam, that's huge. If it's a $500 million scam, that's huge. I hope Joe Thompson knows exactly what he's talking about when he uses the $9 billion number, because I don't want Tim Walz and Democrats to have an argument at all to go back to the voters and deceive them with well, they're blowing it out of proportion. It's not that big of a deal. So I hope when he says $9 billion, he's got the paperwork to prove it, because I don't want them to give them room to have a rebuttal, because this is egregious. Just so overtly egregious.
It's bad. Mom.
Yeah. And to Joey's point, the question is how quickly can they prosecute these cases? And that's going to rack up the honest total when it all gets to the end of it. And these cases can be hard to prosecute and to prove and to chase down money trails. The House Oversight Committee in this letter to Keith Ellison, the prosecutor here in this case, they make the argument that the state essentially knew that this fraud was happening and allowed it to occur. In this letter, it says a June 2024 report from the Minnesota Department of Education found that the threat of litigation and negative press from providers engaged in the fraud schemes affected how state officials use their regulatory power. A former fraud investigator in the Attorney General's office said that state regulators, especially those in the Democratic-led administration, were reluctant to take action in response to the allegations involving the Somali community. So there were concerns. So the government protecting itself is the allegation.
They didn't want to be called a name in the local or national press.
Yeah.
So they allowed their taxpayers and all of us to be robbed blind. What a Christmas tale.
Hey,
Welcome back to DC Breakdown, where we cut to the spin and expose the truth the mainstream media won't touch. New details are surfacing about what is now being described as an alleged $9 billion welfare fraud scandal in Minnesota, and the numbers are staggering. What started as isolated cases has grown into a massive web of alleged abuse, mismanagement, and complete failure of oversight under Democrat-controlled leadership. According to investigators, federal and state welfare programs meant to help vulnerable families may have been systematically exploited for years. Millions, possibly billions, of taxpayer dollars were allegedly funneled into fraudulent claims, shell organizations, and improper payments. And the most troubling part? Red flags were reportedly raised early on. Instead of acting decisively, state officials allegedly delayed, dismissed, or ignored warnings. Bureaucrats kept approving funds while accountability took a backseat. This wasn't just incompetence. This looks like a culture of looking the other way. Let's be clear. Welfare programs exist to help Americans in real need. But when Democrats expand government without enforcing safeguards, this is what happens. Big government, zero accountability, and hard-working taxpayers left holding the bill. Minnesota has been under long-term Democrat control, and now serious questions are being asked. Who knew? When did they know? And why wasn't action taken sooner? Republicans have been demanding answers, transparency, and prosecutions where crimes occurred. Yet instead of addressing the magnitude of the problem, Democrats and their media allies try to downplay it or shift blame elsewhere. This alleged scandal is not just about Minnesota. It's a warning for the entire country. When government grows too large, too fast, and without oversight, fraud isn't the exception. It becomes inevitable. At DC Breakdown, we believe in compassion with accountability. Helping people should never mean enabling corruption. Taxpayer money belongs to the American people, not politicians, not bureaucrats, and certainly not fraudsters. If this money had been protected, imagine what it could have done for schools, infrastructure, veterans, and law-abiding families. This story is still developing, and we'll continue to bring you the facts without the spin. God bless America.